Hi, and welcome to BariAftercare, the podcast. And today's episode is titled Easier Said Than Done, Excuse or Reality. But before we get into that, I'm going to share with you some exciting news. Life evolves, and so does the podcast. So, what I want to share with you is that beginning in June, we are currently May. I think this is the first podcast in May. Might be the second one. But the first podcast beginning in June of this year, 2025, will have a new title. Be the same great information, but it will be called Weight Loss Win Formation. Kind of catchy, right? Weight Loss Win Formation. Because we're going to include in our Weight Loss Win Formation podcast people who are losing weight by any means. So it could be a medical weight loss program, it could be any kind of supervised medical diet, could be a fad diet, could be a GLP-1. A lot of people who have had bariatric surgery or surgical weight loss procedure are following up with GLP-1s. So we want to make sure that everybody understands that regardless of the method of weight loss, there is a lifestyle that must be turned into a habit, hence the lifestyle. So there are the gotta do'ems. We've got the BariAftercare gotta do'ems. We've got the lifestyle gotta do'ems. So those things need to be put into place regardless of how a person loses weight if they're going to keep the weight off. So we're going to incorporate the weight loss world into one podcast called Weight Loss Win Formation. I'll keep reminding you of that throughout this month and let you know the details about whether or not you'll have to search for the new podcast or not. I'm not technical, and so I have to check with my team to figure out how that's all going to work. But I wanted to give you all a little bit of a heads up starting now. So that will be fun. And we're going to talk about the same great topics that are related to the emotional and psychological care of your weight loss so that you can maintain a healthy weight, do the things you want to do, whether you have had weight loss surgery or have lost weight by any other means. So, back to today's episode. Can't tell you if I had a nickel for every time I heard, yeah, but Connie, it's so much easier said than done. I'd also probably be without a nickel because I've said it just as many times. And if I had to give away a nickel for every time I've said it, I'd probably come up even. It's true. Easier said than done. That is most things in life. Is it an excuse or is it a reality? Both when it comes to maintaining weight loss, losing weight, and other areas of life. We're going to cover all of that today. So we're going to talk about if someone says that, are they making an excuse or is what they're saying a reality? We're also going to discuss the reality of so many things being easier said than done. We'll follow up with the excuse aspect of things being easier said than done. And we're going to dig deep then, and I'm going to give you a can do solution for when we believe that things are easier said than done, which they might be. That may be a reality, but maybe we've got to do them anyway if we're to get to the goals that we say that we want. All right, so let's dig into this. So if somebody says, I know I need to do this, or I know I need to do that, but God, it's so much easier said than done. Are they making an excuse or is what they're saying a reality? Take a minute and think about something you say that's easier said than done. I know I've said it in terms of, you want to get this Spanish thing going. Well, that's easier said than done. However, this month in May, in the BariAftercare program, we are doing a focused challenge on following through with something that you're inspired to do. And that is my thing. So I'm going to put more effort into speaking the Spanish, which is Easier said than done for somebody my age, which I'm not telling. All right, so think about something that you've said, "Oh, God, that's easier said than done." And what do you think? Do you think it's an excuse or do you think it's a reality? Or could it be both? Because you hear it probably a lot now on social media, and I hear it a lot on the radio talk show and other podcasts that I listen to. Two things can be true at the same time, for sure. So when somebody says, "Oh, that's easier said than done," it's almost always a true statement. Think about it. It's easier to talk about doing just about anything than actually following through and doing it. So let's say this came up in my women's group and not therapy. I'm a member of this group. It's at my church. And we were talking about this. One of the women in the group is a volunteer at a food bank here. And she was asking if any of us would be willing to volunteer either time or money because the food bank is in danger of being shut down because they can't meet their expenses every month. So I piped up with something about, "Oh my gosh, I don't even have time to keep up with my daily work, blah, blah, blah." And I love her because she looked at me and she said, "Well, I choose to make time for this." And I actually emailed her, texted her this morning. And I said, "I got to tell you how much I love and respect and value your honesty." I said, "Because you are exactly right. I could make time to volunteer there if that was something I really wanted to do. Easier said than done. I have a very busy schedule, as do most people, but it could be done. Yes, it's easier to say I'm going to make room in my schedule than it is for me to carve out time to do that. Now, that is not something I'm going to carve out time to do because I volunteer in some other ways and I have other commitments. That is not the top priority for me at this particular time in my life. So, depending on what season of your life, you may say it's easier said than done, which could be a reality, but it could also be an excuse, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. It's also easier when we're listening to, somebody share a situation that they're going through. We'll make a statement like, "Oh, if that were my kid, I'd kick their butt out of the house if they did that. No questions asked." So much easier to say that than to be the person in the situation who is looking at maybe doing that. So when we're not in that boat, it's sure easy to say what we would do, by golly, but we don't really know if we were in that situation. Then it would be much easier said than actually done if we had the emotional tie to the kid and looking at putting him on the street or whatever it was. Another example, it's a whole lot easier to say before you have surgery or before you go on this weight loss program, if protein is a thing in your weight loss method and you're told, like with bariatric surgery, eat your protein before you eat anything else. Sure, easier to say, of course I'll do that. Of course I'll forego a lot of those highly processed foods after surgery. I'm going to do whatever it takes. After the surgery and you're all healed up and you're eating out in the world, it's a lot harder to follow through than it was to say. It's easier said than done. Very true. In almost every case in life, it could also be an excuse. And what do I mean by that? I have some really interesting quotes that I'm going to share with you in a little while. But what I want to say for now is that it can be an excuse because maybe I did have quite a bit of free time in my schedule and I just didn't want to do the food bank volunteering thing, correct? Well, I could say, I just can't because my schedule is too busy. I don't have time for that. The truth of the matter may be, I just don't want to do that. That doesn't appeal to me. It's not a top priority to me. And so I can use it as an excuse. Or maybe I'm in therapy and the therapist, and this is where I've used this saying a lot in my past. The therapist would say, "Well, Connie, maybe it's an important thing for you to set these boundaries with your family members. Maybe you need to tell your mom this or your sister that or whatever. And it's like, well, that's easier said than done. The truth may have been that I was terrified. I was terrified of having that conversation because it can be scary. So in that case, it's easier said than done is a true statement. And it's also an excuse because it terrifies me. The statement, "It's easier said than done," can also be used as an excuse if you don't wanna do it because maybe you're afraid of failing. We had a whole podcast episode on fear of failure not too long ago, because if I say, "That's easier said than done," which means I don't know that I'm gonna put forth the effort to do that, it might be because I'm afraid that maybe I can't do it, or I'm afraid that maybe I don't have the skills to do that, or I'm afraid that, I just, if I do it and I fail, then I risk beating myself up or hearing it from other people. And, that's just easier said than done. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Or it could be I say it's easier said than done and don't want to follow through because maybe I'll succeed at it. We've also had episodes on that in the BariAftercare podcast. If I succeed at losing this weight and keeping it off for a while, that means that, God, maybe I'm going to have to keep putting in that high amount of effort all the time. And that's scary. And if I succeed, that means there's gonna be changes, and I'm not sure I like the idea of the changes that are gonna go along with that. So, I don't know if I even wanna succeed at it because there's a lot of unknowns out there. So, while it's true that things can be easier said than done, and we'll talk about both specific areas related to weight loss and just life things. Because, as you know, in BariAftercare, I like to take things beyond bariatrics. Almost all of the episodes that we talk about in the BariAftercare podcast are transferable to other areas of our life. And I like it that way because, yes, we all want to be successful when it comes to maintaining a healthy weight or a healthier weight than we were at one point in time because we have goals. We want to be more engaged in life, doing more things that we enjoy. We want to be more independent, engage in self care. We want to be able to get out there and keep up with, not hold others back, all of the things that were your reasons for wanting to lose weight in the first place. And those are going to come into play. What do I call those things? I refer to those things as meaningful matters, your values, your whys. Why did I do this? The things that keep you focused on doing the hard work. I was just thinking about in my mind. We've talked about this also on the BariAftercare podcast, or if you've been in any of the classes that I do, we have a line up at the top of the page or, up here at our forehead, and that's how we want to live our life. And we know what we have to do that. It's the gotta do ums. Down here by my chin or down further on the piece of paper is another line that says where I'm at, which is how I'm living my daily life. And there are some things in there that don't quite match up to my value or my goal of living this healthy lifestyle. Like maybe I go off on food binges, or maybe I eat out way too often. What are the obstacles that keep me from doing what I know I need to do to live at this healthier weight, to maintain this healthier lifestyle? Well, those obstacles are what we are trying to focus on in the BariAftercare podcast so that you can overcome them and decrease the space between knowing what to do and what you're actually doing. So, this episode, talking about so much easier said than done, Connie, that could be one of the obstacles. That phrase, that line, that reality, that potential excuse could be one of the things that keeps you from doing what you know you need to do. So we need to look at that and break it down a little bit. So let's look at the reality and then let's look at how each of these realities could also be an excuse based on the things we just talked about. Because a lot of these things, you know, maybe you just don't want to do them. A lot of these things, maybe you're afraid that if you try them or attempt them, you'll fail. Some of these things you're afraid to actually succeed because of all the upkeep required following success. Or maybe you just plain don't have the skills. So let's look at what's what. When we talk about weight loss by whatever means and maintaining that weight loss, there are some bariatric gotta do's. And again, this pertains to any means of weight loss. With bariatric surgery or any surgical procedure, you're going to lose that weight in a hurry. And over time, it's going to be easier to put that weight back on if you're not following what you were taught by the doctor, the nutritionist, the psychologist, the whole team that helped you prepare for surgery. If you're losing weight with GLP-1s and for whatever reason you have to go off of them, talked to a man this morning, he lost 60 pounds. He said within 2 months of being off that medication, even though he said he ate well and was exercising and living a healthier lifestyle, he did say there are some improvements that could be made, of course, but he regained 40 of those pounds within 2 months. So, if for any reason you ever have to go off of a GLP, we know that it's very easy to regain some of that weight. That yo yo diet thing, right? If you go on a fad diet of any sort, and really most medical weight loss programs, if you don't have a program like BariAftercare to teach you the skills and help you develop the healthy habits that turn into your lifestyle, you know that the weight gain is likely to follow. So, regardless of how a person loses weight, there are bariatric or there are bariatric gotta do's. And one of those gotta do's is you got to make healthy food choices most of the time. That doesn't say you have to be deprived. But isn't it true that making healthy food choices most of the time is a whole lot easier said than done? I mean, look at our advertising, radio, television, social media, food, 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 all over the place. You can't escape it, especially in our culture. Makes it difficult to make healthy food choices most of the time. Any office environment can make it real difficult to make healthy food choices most of the time. Heck, people tell me they work at those call centers where they bring around food carts, for God's sake, with all the junk food. Once in a while, there may be a healthy option, but when you're faced with all of those temptations right in your face next to your desk, it's easier said than done. Let's say you live in a home where there is more than just you living there. Maybe there's kids or grandkids or partners or grandparents or roommates. Well, they may want to bring foods into the house that are not really that conducive to your maintaining a healthy lifestyle. So we are contending with triggers, obstacles, food in our face, food in our ears, food in our eyes. I don't mean that literally food in our ears or our eyes, but I mean media, advertising. God, I hope you don't have people stuffing food in your ears and your eyes. You need to move out if that's the case. But it makes the point that sure is easier said than done to maintain this bariatric God to do 'em. What about exercise on a regular basis? People either really love to exercise and they get into it and they get into it to the point where they can't imagine not exercising. And that is a matter of persistence for years and years or days and weeks and months. That's how it is for me. As I always say, I'm not a hardcore exerciser, but I am an incredibly consistent and persistent exerciser. I'm either going to walk my 3 miles or do some yoga or do some hand weights or do a little bit of Pilates or maybe do my walk and one of those other things. Or I'm not real good in the head. It clears my head Do I exercise every single day? No, but 4 or 5 days minimum. Other people are like, they'll go on a stretch, right? They'll get it down good for a while and then they just let it go. The all or nothing. I'm in it all the way or I'm out of it. Other people are sporadic. Maybe they'll go once or twice a week. Whoever you are and however you do it, I'm not judging or criticizing or suggesting, but I am saying that in order to live a healthy lifestyle, exercise needs to be a part of that in some way, shape, or form. How that is, how often that is between you and your healthcare professional. But it is easier for the most part. Even for me, somebody who is very regimented in terms of exercise, it's easier said than done. It would be easier not to exercise. Now, I might go a little bonkers in my head, and my family might literally take me and set me on my treadmill and turn it on because they know it calms me and helps me stay a little more sane. But it is certainly easier said than done. I could easily fill up my time. I'm planning to start a second podcast. By the way, that one's going to be called Winformation for Life. And it's going to be about everyday things that here's a tip to make these situations that we all encounter most days a little bit easier for all of us. That's neither here nor there. But I could easily take that exercise time and fill it up with other things, as can you. So making time for exercise is easier said than done. Many people who are listening are parents, have jobs, are in school, are taking care of other people in their lives, ill people or people who have special needs or just the caretakers of the whole community because that's what they like to do. We have to create that time and make the space, and it's easier said than done. Here's another one, getting enough sleep. This is probably my most difficult one because I start work at 8 o'clock, but I love late night. You may be a morning person, you may be a night person, but a lot of us don't get enough good quality sleep. That is essential to live a healthy lifestyle and to maintain weight loss. So we have to figure out, it's easier said than done for some people to make sure they get a good night's sleep. How about meal prepping? Holy moly, talk about easier said than done. Meal prepping can be that can be a full-time job for some people, depending on what kind of meals you're talking about. Or it can be made very simple. My meal planning is super, super, super simple. My daughters, their meal planning is a little bit more extensive. So either way, with a busy life and all these other gotta do's, so much easier said than done. So we could say the same thing about almost all of the bariatric gotta do's. And the gotta do's, again, are the behaviors that we need to follow through with to develop into habits to create the healthy lifestyle. Because regardless of the method of weight loss, healthy lifestyle is the only way, with the assistance of other things. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying regardless of what weight loss method you incorporate into your life to help you get that weight off and maybe keep the hunger down, you've got to have a healthy lifestyle in order to be your best, feel your best, be your healthiest, all of those things. All right. So clearly, maintaining the lifestyle of a person who's going to keep their weight at a healthier level and be their healthiest self, easier said than done. What about other things? What about life things? Let's say if you're like me, hot-headed, quick temper, taking the time to say things calmly and appropriately to your kids, your partners, your siblings, the people that you work with, mostly the people we're most comfortable with because we behave less appropriately with people in our closer realms. True. It's easier said than done to go, okay, take a deep breath. Kids, I've asked you 5 times now to clean up this toy room instead of going, how many times do I have to tell you now? By God, get your butts in there and get that room clean. Takes a lot more effort to go the calm route. Easier said than done to maintain that on a consistent basis. How about setting boundaries with others, whether it's in relation to food, talking about weight loss, whether it's in relation to what the bedtime for your children when they're at your house, whether it's, my children will go to church on Sunday or my children will not go to church. So if you're going to have them overnight, you need to abide by my rules. Anything, setting boundaries with your friends, your family can be very, very difficult. And for the majority of people, I'm going to say this is easier said than done because there are so many factors associated with setting boundaries with other people. What other factors? Well, I hate conflict. Well, in my family, all I saw with conflict was yelling and screaming, or maybe it was throwing things, or maybe it was name calling. And I don't want to engage in any of that. So maybe you don't have the skills and you need to learn some skills to be able to set boundaries in healthy ways. And maybe you need to overcome a lot of fears in order to be able to do that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, life things easier said than done. What about going back to school? In BariAftercare, we have a woman who's been an amazing example for all of us of the determination, the effort, the grit, the persistence, the consistent behavior, the determination to follow through with going back to school while taking care of her very ailing parent and taking care of a very sick dog. So she's been a great example of, yeah, it's easier said than done, but doing it anyway, or going up for a job promotion, or getting that next certification so you can increase your chances of getting hired for women. That requires maybe a lot of time. It could require a lot of money to get that certification or the skills you need to further your career. So much easier said than done, especially if you got a lot of other things going on in your life. How about making new friends in life? Is that easier said than done? Oh, heck yeah. I remember when my husband and I had moved to Texas from Iowa with our children. And I remember my kids saying, how do you make new friends? And I'm thinking, well, how do you make new friends? It is not an easy task. And we talked about this when we did the book review of Let Them by Mel Robbins, because she talks about and has a whole chapter or two on how difficult it can be to make new friends, especially as an adult. So is it easier said than done? You go, well, just get out there, get involved in some things, make some new friends. Well, that's easier said than done. Heck yeah, it is. Heck yeah, it is. Or learning a new skill, playing the instrument or learning the new language. What about saving money? How much easier said than done is that? Most people are on a very tight budget already. So to say, well, just save a little money aside for the holidays or a vacation or a new car or a bigger house or a house to begin with. That's easier said than done in real life. Here's another one that most of us face and we talk a lot about in the BariAftercare program: maintaining a positive attitude, getting rid of the stinking thinking, which we've talked about the last 2 podcast episodes. That is so much easier said than done because we've got these automatic negative thoughts that play against our desire to be more positive. So it really, really takes a lot of effort. All right, so we know that when it comes to the weight loss gotta do's or real life, not that the weight loss things aren't real life, but other areas of life, things to do, it's a reality. Things are easier said than done. So why do we do them? Why do we do these things that are easier said than done? We do them because we want the outcome. So that's why maintaining your meaningful matters, your goals, your whys, the reasons for doing this remain at the top of your head, and why it's a great idea to take sticky notes, make your screensaver, put a note on your phone. My longevity, being off medications, being able to do the things I want to do, and put a little list of those things that are on your bucket list to do when you're at a healthier weight and living a healthier life. Keeping those things at the forefront is great source of motivation, one source of motivation. But remember, we don't always do the things we know are required to get to where we want to be. Knowing what to do and doing it, two different things. So we got to look at those obstacles, one of them being, well, it's easier said than done, for sure. How badly do you want that promotion? How badly do you want that degree? How badly do you want to be a gentler, calmer parent? How badly do you want to improve the relationship with your sibling, your parent, your spouse, your partner? How badly do you want to eat protein before everything else? How badly do you want the benefit of exercising for your overall health? We have to keep our meaningful matter. We have to act in accordance with our values, what we're going for. So we have to keep that top of mind. That's one of the ways to do this. So we know for sure that pretty much everything in life is easier said than done. Now we got to make a decision. We're going to put forth the effort it takes or not. That becomes a decision. And then we need to say, are we going to make excuses and say it's easier said than done and leave it alone and not do the doing? I found some interesting quotes about excuses. And there's an author whose name is James L. Tucker or L. Toucher. I don't know, Altucher. He's an author, he's a podcaster, he's an entrepreneur who has founded or co-founded over 20 companies. So this is a person who knows it's easier said than done. It's difficult to start a company. It's difficult to do all of the things. So much easier said than done. So when it comes to excuses, here's what this guy has to say. Excuses, he said, they're lies. They are lies. We use excuses to hide from ourselves. Excuses keep us from ourselves. Well, what does he mean by that? Remember when we talked about reasons that we make excuses, or the reasons we say it's easier said than done if we are using this as an excuse? Well, I don't want to admit that. You know what? I just don't want to do this. Yeah, I know I want to lose weight. Yeah, I know I want to be healthier, but you know what? I just don't want to do the meal prep. I just don't want to do the exercise. I just don't want to do the keeping a journal of my food. I just don't want to, you know, exercise. I just don't want to, oh, these healthy choices. Oh my gosh, I just don't want to do this. Or maybe it's so much easier to say it's easier said than done than to admit to ourselves, I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of failing. I have felt so many failures, or I have thought of so many things. We talked about changing that thinking, but where I'm at now, I have so many perceived failures that I'm not I'm not up for another setback or another personal sense of failure. So I'm just going to say, hey, it's easier said than done and leave it at that. I'm not putting forth the effort because I cannot risk emotionally another, what I perceive to be personal failure. Or again, maybe we hide from ourselves. We use the excuse because I've done this so many times. Yeah, I'm afraid to fail, but I'm also afraid to succeed. I've seen what happens when I lose weight and keep it off, or I've seen what happens when people get that promotion at work. Now there's no work-life balance. Now their kids suffer. Now their partners are complaining all the time. Or I've seen what happens if you set boundaries with close friends and people. They cut you off and they talk bad about you on social media. I don't know if I'm up for all of that. Easier said than done. But it's an excuse to protect me from having to deal with my own fears, my own inadequacies. I don't know how to do that. I don't feel like I have the skills to be able to do that, and I don't like to ask for help. So, from this man's perspective, he's saying excuses are lies that we tell ourselves so we don't have to face the things we don't want to look at about ourselves. I don't disagree. I don't think it's always that way. I don't think anything's always. I don't think things are always one way or always another way, but I think there's the possibility that that is true, that we make an excuse because we don't want to look at our own fear or our own like, "Ugh, I just don't want to put the effort into that." So, another quote this by the same guy, excuses are easy lies to tell ourselves to cover up our failures. Same kind of thought. It's just looking at ourselves and go, you know what? I've tried to start 3 companies, they all failed. And it's just so much easier. It's so much easier said, do it again, give it another go, try again. What if Michael Jordan had said, you know what? It's so much easier said than done to get out there and practice for another hour when everybody else has gone home. Or it's so much easier said than done to uh, put forth the effort to eat healthy because I want to be a goat in my field. So, for me, a personal example would be there are many things that I have attempted in my career that you might say are failures, like they didn't really catch on. But to me, it's like, okay, well, that was an attempt at something I thought would be a good idea, but apparently wasn't what people are looking for. So let me try another avenue. Part of that is my personality. Part of that is I get bored when I don't have things to do. Part of it is my entrepreneurial spirit. And yet there are limits. For example, the social media thing. So much easier said than done to create all these posts and keep active on social media. So much easier said than done. Well, Connie, that's true. How badly do you want this? Not badly enough to learn all that social media stuff. True story. But I will pay somebody else to do it. So that is something that I can pay somebody else to do, but I really can't pay somebody to exercise for me. I really can't pay somebody else to make sure I make healthier food choices unless you're, super crazy rich. So there's an example of me saying, I don't want to put the time and the effort into learning those skills. I'm trying to put some courses onto an online platform. I don't want to learn those skills. So I am willing to hire somebody else to take the content and do that for me. But I'm not willing to do what it takes to get that because if I'm going to do it, it's not going to get done because it's not worth that to me. So one of the things you have to decide is how worth it is what I say I want. Yeah, I want to be out there on social media and everybody hearing about all the things I'm doing, but I'm not willing to do the work. So therefore, I'm not going to get the outcome unless I pay somebody else to do it. Same goes with all the things. Let's go back to these bariatric behaviors that you got to do if you want to get the results, the healthy lifestyle, exercise on a regular basis. I just don't want to do it. Not something you can pay somebody else to do it. Or maybe you're stuck in that all or nothing mentality, which the last 2 podcast episodes can help you overcome, as can many of the others. But that may be one of the hurdles between knowing what to do and following through with doing it. You might need to learn some skills for changing your thinking. So maybe the thing that's in your way is I don't have the skills to change my self-talk or I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid that I'll just quit again because that's what I've done in the past. All that tells me is you need some coaching or you need some education to help you overcome those hurdles. Nobody can do that one for you. Same with getting enough sleep. Unless mommy or daddy's going to tuck you in and turn off the light and take all your electronics, which I hope isn't happening if you're over the age of 18 or even close to that. But, you may just be like, I don't want to. I'd rather doom scroll. for an hour and get an hour less sleep. In my case, as much as I say I want to get enough sleep, my priority is often in writing or reading or preparing something for the work that I do that I love. So you have to make choices. You have to make choices. Now, when there are consequences to not getting enough sleep, then I may need to reevaluate that. For example, last week I knew that I couldn't handle one more person's voice. I couldn't handle one more, taking care of, putting aside my time to take care of one of my grandkids or help one of my kids because I was like, nobody talked to me. And I went and I sat on my swing. No, I didn't sit on it. I laid down. I took a 2-hour nap because the consequences of not getting enough sleep were starting to interfere in my life in a way I didn't like. So sometimes we have to regroup and we have to re-strategize, and then we have to put forth the effort. Now let's talk about this meal prep thing for a minute because a lot of people just don't want to do it. And I get that. I get that. So you have to evaluate, how badly do I want this healthy lifestyle? Now you can some people are foodies, man. They love food. So in order to be satisfied and have a variety of foods, meal prepping is really important so that you have a variety of foods, so that you take the time maybe one day a week to get the various ingredients and make 3 or 4 different recipes that you can choose from throughout the week. That is not me. But if that is you and that is how you like to do it, then it's certainly going to be easier said than done. If you want it badly enough, then you will find the time and you'll create the time and you will make the time to do that. For me, meal planning is simple. Have a whole bunch of sources of protein on hand and pick one and go. I have protein drinks. I have chicken that's all shredded up in my fridge. Greek yogurt is probably my number one go-to for right now. I have the Greek yogurt and I have the protein granola, and then I put some berries in there. That's calling it a meal, and off I go. I don't want to do major meal prep. I want to have a lot of protein. I want to have a healthy food lifestyle. That's my version of it. What is yours? Nobody gets to tell you what it is, but you got to choose if you're going to create it or if you're not. And it is so much easier said than done. Making new friends. I have a lot of single women for clients. A lot of them are very, very lonely. It's hard to live with lonely. Well, go make some new friends. Easier said than done. But I'll tell you what, I have some women who what did my granddaughter say to me? They slay it. I'm like, oh my gosh. We were at a baseball tournament and we had 4 hours in between games, or maybe it was 3. But I said, listen, I'm going to a wedding in 2 weeks. I need something new to wear to this wedding. So my 8-year-old granddaughter came with me and we're looking at things and she's trying things on in the dressing room and I'm trying things on in the dressing room. And I put this outfit on. She said, "You slayed it." I said, "Who done what did it?" "You slayed it, Gigi." I was like, "Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" And that's the outfit I got for the wedding because I slayed it. Oh my gosh. Love that baby. All of the babies. Okay, so you want to slay it? Then you got to put forth the effort and not use it's easier said than done as an excuse. So I wanted to also say that I read this, there's this post on Psychology Today. And so it's not just Entrepreneur Man who talks about excuses being lies that we tell ourselves, but there's some stuff. Oh gosh, sorry, itch. There are some things in Psychology Today, and you can look these up, find your own information about how excuses can be thought of as lies that we use to avoid confronting ourselves. Maybe confronting our failures, maybe confronting our fears, maybe confronting our lack of perceived ability. But they ultimately, this is what it says in Psychology Today, if we use excuses, easier said than done, being one of those, it hinders our personal growth. So, whatever excuses you use, and we're kind of digging deep into easier said than done today, but whatever excuses you make to not follow through with what you're doing requires some work. And as a therapist, my job is to help people. Again, we have knowing what to do and what we do. And there's usually a gap in between not doing the things we know to do to get what we say we want. My job is to help people identify and then dig deeper into what are those things? Well, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? Let's talk about what exactly you're afraid of. We explore. I'm afraid that if I follow through, I'll be successful. Or I'm afraid that if I follow through, I'll fail again. Or if I follow through, my family will say, "Oh, who do you think you are? You think you're so much better," and they'll isolate me. Or I fear that if I follow through and I get this promotion at work and I become people's supervisors, then they don't want to be my friend anymore. So it's not just identifying what is in the way between doing what you know to do and doing it. It can often be brought down with the help of a therapist to what is at the core of that? What's at the origin of that? When else have you felt that way in your life? What were you told about yourself? You'll never succeed. You were bullied. You don't have the belief in yourself. Nobody ever taught you the skills of how to have a healthy confrontation or healthy communication. So it's deep. It can get very, very, very deep. That's why just identifying the potential obstacle isn't always enough. So sometimes we need to get out of ourselves and get therapy. Well, that's easier said than done. Of course it is. All right. Now, let's talk about what can I do if I become aware that I'm using this particular, it's easier said than done, as a reason not to do it, whether that's because I don't want to do it, or I'm afraid of failing, or I'm afraid of people leaving me, or I'm afraid I'll succeed at it, whatever that is based on. I'm going to give you a tool that you can use, and there are many. There are many. This is just one to help you develop a can do attitude. Even though the truth of the matter is, it is easier said than done, as is almost everything. I'm going to give you this tool to help overcome. It's easier said than done. And it is a can do attitude, which is what we want to have, right? It's motivating, it's positive, it's moving you in a direction. It's not, maybe I'll think about it. It's I can do it. So let me tell you what can do stands for. And you can make a note of this, or I'll post it in the BariAftercare room on Facebook. Can do. Consider. Consider. Well, it's easier said than done. Okay, consider, is this a reality? The answer is probably yes. But is it also an excuse? Am I afraid? Am I fearful? Do I feel I lack the skills, or do I just not want to do it? So I've got to consider this. It's a reality. It is a reality. But I'm also using it as an excuse. So C is for consider. A is for awareness. Awareness. I'm aware that the goal is something I really, really want. I really, really want the promotion. I really want to be able to have, conversations with my family members where I can set boundaries. I really want to maintain this weight. I really want to develop a healthy habit of exercise. I really want to get into the habit of meal prepping. So it's a high priority value. Awareness. Yes, yes, I want this really, really badly. Okay, what actually can I do to move forward? Maybe it's a little bitty thing. Well, maybe I can ask somebody else how they meal prep. Well, maybe I can find out if there's a less expensive course to get that certification. Well, maybe I can borrow the money from somebody until I get the certification and the raise and then pay them back. Maybe I can set my alarm to give me 30 minutes to prepare for bed instead of staying up that extra time. What can I actually do? Because we can come up with a list of 1,000 reasons why it is so much easier said than done. So true. But what can I do? A lot of people struggle with that all or nothing. I'm either going to do it or I'm not going to do it. But instead of jumping into I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it every day and I'm going to do it perfectly, what is an awareness? What is a step I can take that I can actually do? So consider reality or excuse. What's my awareness? How big of a priority is this? And if it is a big priority to me, what can I do? I'm aware of what I can do. The N in can do is notice how I feel. What is your emotion about this? Well, I'm really scared. I'm really scared to go back to school. It's been 30 years. I don't know if I can memorize anything. I'm really scared about the failure. I'm really scared about the success. Or I'm really scared that I'm just going to blow up at my partner or my kids, even though I'm making this effort to do it in a softer, gentler way with them. So maybe your emotion is I'm really sad. I'm really sad because I'm going to miss the friends who are now my coworkers because I've seen what happens when somebody gets promoted as now their boss. Things change. So I really feel sad about that possibility. Or, you know what? I'm really angry. I'm really angry about the fact that it's necessary to food prep. I'm angry about that. I don't want to do it. But because this is a top priority, these are some steps I can take. Have sources of protein all around. I can do that. So pay attention to how you feel. Process that with somebody. Talk about it. Let it be real. Where do you feel it in your body? How do you relax from that? CAN, do. Decide. Am I going to do it or not? You know what? I'm not going to learn the skills it takes to be a social media guru. Not going to do it. Mm-mm. You might decide, you know what? I'm not going to take on that exercise thing. I'm just not going to do it. Okay. You can choose not to do it, but then you don't get to complain if your weight doesn't change or if your strength doesn't increase or if you put weight back more easily or if your health doesn't improve. So I can choose not to do it, but I don't get a bitch about it then, right? Welcome to camp. Quit your bitching. Confronted a friend last week. She's not real happy with me because I was like, listen, you're going to have to decide. And I literally said what I would say to myself or what has been said to me or what I share with clients. It's your choice, but it's also your consequences. You choose. She got real mad at me. She's still real mad at me. And I said, well, let me know when you're ready to talk. All right, so decide I'm going to do it or I'm not going to do it. And then the O for do is list your options. Well, if it's the meal prepping thing, well, I can start with having sources of protein available with me. Or I can start with asking somebody to do it with me. Or I can start with, making sure that I at least pack my lunch. That's the most difficult thing for me. I can do the rest of the things or, you know, write down your options. Okay, I get it. I've got to do some dang exercise. What are my options? Well, you know what? I could do resistance bands. I could sit on the couch and watch a 10-minute YouTube video for seated chair exercises. I could, check into that Zumba thing people talk about. I could check into, the neighborhood gym or the neighborhood pickleball club, or I could check into those things. I could try it. So options for proceeding. So again, let me go over this can do attitude that can lead you to doing. Because without doing, you ain't going to get nothing, right? I posted this in the Facebook group for BariAftercare. I love this. If it's easier said than done, then keep doing what's easy and let me know how far you get. Let me repeat that because it takes some thinking about. If it's easier said than done, then keep doing what's easy and let me know how far you get. In other words, if you choose the easy route, you're probably not going to get to where you want to be with the goals, the healthy lifestyle in this case. So keep doing that easy thing, see how far you get. So achieving results does require doing. So again, the can do, consider, is this a reality? Can I literally not afford this thing? Then there's no sense in even attempting it if you really cannot do that. That's a reality. Or am I using this as an excuse? You have to decide. So consider reality, excuse, or maybe both. Maybe reality is it's real tough, but I can do these things. I know I can do them. Awareness. Awareness of how important is the goal and what can I actually do? Because maybe there are parts of this that I can't yet do, but what can I do to get started? And then pay attention to how you feel. Do you feel excited, nervous, worried, upset? Decide, am I going to do it or not? And if I decide I am going to do it, what are my options for moving forward? And it can be incrementally. Incremental growth is growth, my friends. And that's what we're going for, progress, not perfection. So there you go. You have a new tool, can do. Sit down, write it out, or go onto the BariAftercare page and take a screenshot and write it down. But have a can do attitude that will help you overcome the excuses because we know the reality is everything's easier said than done. Thanks for spending your time with me. I'm excited to expand the BariAftercare into weight loss win formation. We're going to set you up to win. And also coming, not in June, but by fall, win formation for life. And when you follow through, then you will be a winspiration for others. Clever, right? Oh my gosh. All right, off to win. Thanks again for spending time with me. Share this podcast with others because, again, it goes beyond bariatrics and so does your life. Your health, your responsibility this day, every day. I'll see you next time. Bye.